Hello, listener. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. Yep, I'm already dropping jewels just by you listening to this podcast. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. How simple is that? Anchor will do all the work for you by distributing your podcast for you so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Not to mention, you can make money from your podcast as well with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So what are you waiting on? Download the Anchor app and get busy. Hello, listener. The year is 1985 and Kanye West is getting ready to take the stage and murder it. Kendrick Lamar just killed it. It's the Rock the Bells tour. And J. Cole is an upcoming new act performing later. The show is packed. The fans is going crazy. But that's old hip hop. Nowadays, in 2020, we got real rap that changed the culture. Hate 'em or love 'em, we got LL Cool J. Oh, and you can't forget about KOO MOE DEE. He's got to be like one of the top 3 rappers in the world. He kills it in his latest album, Damn. KRS ONE is a chameleon of hip hop. He's always changing up his style. One minute he's Jamaican, the next he's from Houston, tippin slow. But originally he's from Toronto and all the ladies love him. So, what makes it in this era of music, 80s and 90s? And could the rappers of the past make it today? This is inconsistently consistent. So I was watching this video the other day on Vlad TV. Shout out to Vlad. And one of the people that he was interviewing was Russell Peters. So I know you're asking yourself, who's Russell Peters and why do I give a fuck? Well, Russell Peters is a famous comedian who made the Forbes list this year. I think it was number 3 if I'm not mistaken. But I wanted to know more about him just for the fact that he made the Forbes list and him being a stand-up comedian and the fact that he was speaking on hip-hop. That's what kind of dove me into this episode. He stated that Kendrick Lamar and Drake would end up being just another rapper in the golden age of hip-hop. We're talking about 80s and 90s. So that got me thinking, could they survive? Could Kanye West and Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole and some of the top rappers in the game, could they survive in the 80s and 90s era of hip-hop? I mean, because you're talking about, Sugar Hill Gang, Run DMC, KOO MOE DEE. Going into the 90s, you got Biggie and Tupac, obviously. The Foo Schnickers, Tribe Called Quest. I mean, all these different groups, right, that came out of the golden era of hip-hop. Could some of your new artists battle it out with some of these older artists? That got me thinking. Not to mention, there's all these versus battles going on YouTube. That's why I altered the history in the beginning of this episode. I wanted to really think, could Kanye West be someone that would stick out in the 80s and the 90s? I mean, obviously he dressed like it. From 808s and Heartbreak, he took it back, which we all loved. But could he survive with the music that he was making? College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, all dope albums. But then you got Yeezus and TLOP, Ye. Could those albums make it in 80s and 90s hip hop? So there's 2 parts to Kanye. There's an old Kanye and there's a new Kanye. I think the new Kanye probably wouldn't make it in that golden age of hip hop. I think it would be way too out there. But I think he would end up ultimately becoming a pop act like he is now. Just probably on a different scale. I think just because the fact that he takes it back with the samples, and that's where he originally started from with the samples, is one of the reasons why he'll be able to cross over like he did. I don't see him sticking out as much, but I do see him floating around that era and sticking around that era. Because you got to remember, he gave us College Dropout, and that was so hip hop for its time. It took you back to the golden age of hip hop just a bit. Plus, the fact that he was a producer gives him an ultimate leg up in music. Because again, he busted in the door as being a producer. Nobody thought he could rap. So I could picture Kanye in like Sugar Hill Gang or something like that. I could picture him like showing everybody in the group like how to dress and how to style themselves. I don't know. That's just kind of like how I picture Kanye West. Don't get me wrong. He's one of my top artists of all time. But him back in the day, he would survive, but in different ways, I think. I don't think he takes it to the height that he takes it now. And that's just my honest opinion. So now, J. Cole. Let's get on J. Cole for a little bit because I don't want to make this episode all about Mr. West. So, J. Cole, I think, could make it in that era of hip hop. I think J. Cole now. No, I'll take that back. J. Cole in general, because even going back to when he threw out the mixtapes before he even blew, the boy was on his shit, and obviously like he was, trying to find himself in the beginning. But I think J. Cole would probably fit in, I would have to say probably in like the Q-Tip and the Tribe Called Quest era. Like, I think he would fit in like so dopely there just because he has some, he still got this conscious rap on lock because he dropped the warm up. That was dope. He also, when he came in the game, the Cold World, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of that album, but I definitely took a listen when Born Sinner came out. And then the Ultimate 2014 Hills Drive, that was dope. And then For Your Eyes Only was dope too. I liked it, the concept. But again, the main thing that he captured is a story, and he was telling you a story through his consciousness of rap. And it was dope. And that's all the 80s and 90s did, is tell you a story. And Q-Tip, I keep saying Q-Tip instead of like saying Tribe Called Quest. The Tribe, my bad, like, they had that conscious flow too. But I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I would say like they take it there consciously in a different way. But I think J. Cole could fit into that era so tight. I don't think he'd just be another rapper that's just there. I really think he could do some damage in that era as well if he went back. And that brings me to Kendrick. So what started this whole thing was the fact that it was the battle between Kendrick and Drake. In Russell Peters' mind, he thinks that Drake is a bigger artist than Kendrick just because to him Drake makes more hits, Drake is more out there, and Kendrick is the more conscious rapper. But Kendrick ends up getting more Grammys than Drake through all the shit that Drake pulls. It just seems like Drake is just making music just to be in relevancy or to be on everybody's tip of their tongue, as opposed to Kendrick is making great taste in music, something that you can swallow and digest. I mean, watching this video, I was like screaming at my TV. But let's see. Kendrick in the 80s and 90s, abso-fucking-lutely. He makes it in this era. So just going through his album, Overly Dedicated, classic. Section 80, classic. Good Kid, Mad City, classic. To Pimp a Butterfly, definitely a classic. Even the Untitled Unmastered shit is still classic. He puts out bodies of work that is timeless over, a span of every 2 years. I think he's dropping like an album, and this shit's absolutely ridiculous. Obviously he's talking about his life, but it's the way that it's structured and the way that he talks about his life that definitely makes him a rapper that could fit in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, think about Snoop from the 90s, think about Pac, think about Big, think about Method Man, think about the Wu. All these artists from the 90s, that nigga kills in this era. Like, hands fucking down. He's going to make a movement in this era. He's not just gonna be another rapper. Like, his lyrical content is so complex. And obviously, I'm making a point to say, obviously, he studied the game, right? So he didn't get all of this just because he woke up one day and boom, he was this ultimate rapper. He studied the game. He had to. But what I'm saying is his lyrical content from before to now, it stayed consistent. It stayed with a theme. It stayed with a story. It stayed with conscious. It's making you think. I mean, all the things that embody hip hop, and not to mention, to top that all off, he even throws in tracks that you can get your bop to and that you can dance to. I've heard this so many times. He puts the medicine in the candy, and he definitely does every single time. So I'm hands down, this guy makes it in the era of the 80s and the 90s. Not to mention, let's even take something else back that he does now to this day. You don't necessarily see him dressing in the latest shit. He keeps it old school. So he definitely knows where his roots is in order to make it in today's hip hop. He's authentic. That's why he has so many fans that are loyal and down.
I know you're enjoying the show, but we gotta pay some bills. Period.
I love music because it helps me understand my reality. It helps me free my thoughts. If I didn't have music, I don't think life would be as fulfilling, mixed with all the highs and the lows life can bring you. My name is Eric, aka Everything Real Is Known. You're listening to track 1, Start, off my new album, 1 Year Plan. You can listen to the whole album on Spotify, Apple Music, and any other streaming platforms. Now back to the show. This takes me to another point. All the damn voices that he does on each different track to give you a feel and to give you the emotion and to take you back and forth through his life, that shit's fucking bananas. Which is reason why I think that he totally survives in this era. I would even go as far to say, and this might be a huge debate, I would even go as far to say that even though he studied the game of hip hop and he studied the Pac a lot, I would even say that Kendrick might give Pac a run for his money in that era of time. You put Kendrick back in that time and have him go against Pac in the booth, he's giving Pac a run for his money. Now, I know I'm about to get a lot of fucking hate for this next comment, but I gotta say this in my honest opinion. I think he gives Pac a run for his money, but I think him and Big might be neck to neck. And the reason why I say that is because for me, I got on Big late, only because of all the West Coast, East Coast shit that was going on. I was in the West Coast, I was riding with Pac. So I didn't really give Big a chance, or I didn't really give him a listen. I was on my fuck Big shit, fuck Bad Boy. But once I start to get older and I start to go back and dive into Big's albums, I was like, this dude's a fucking monster. I'm like, wow, I can't believe some of the shit he's saying and how he's putting it together. Not to mention, it's all freestyle. It's not written down. So that right there goes above and beyond far as for like a lyricist for me. But I think, Kendrick sits down and writes a song. He's given, like, him and Big could go toe to toe, I think. but I think he might outshine Pac just a little bit. Just a little bit. I might be wrong, but hey, again, this is my opinion. So now let's get to Drake. Mr. El Drake. Mr. Poppy Champagne Poppy. I think that's one of his names. I don't know. Let's get to Drake. This dude never, ever, 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 ever stays in one lane. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? To me, if he was going back to that era of time of music, we talking about the 80s and the 90s, I think this dude gets no play. He becomes just another rapper if it's 80s and 90s. I'm going to tell you why. Even though back in the day, everything was being based off being real, but 2020 we find out a lot of this shit wasn't real. A lot of people was being fake back in the day, and it was all entertainment like it is now, but it's not to the extent that it is now. But we're finding now that a lot of shit was full of shit back in the day. But with someone like Drake, who is so out there with his feelings, first off, because that's kind of like how he came in the game. He was on his feelings shit. I mean, he had some flows back in the day that was kind of like, some gangster shit. But he figured out that wasn't his lane. His lane was the ladies.
I know you're enjoying the show, but we gotta pay some bills. Period.
I started my own clothing line. It's called Weird. What is weird and why would you want to wear it, you ask? Well, let me explain. Weird stands for wonderful, entertaining, interesting, rich dork. If you can't find out who you are in one of those words, then this is simply not for you. I created this brand as an anti-bullying clothing line. But for you, it may mean something totally different, and that's okay. Your clothes should have a meaning. With Weird, it's right front and center, if you're only looking for what's on the surface. So if you feel like me, pick up some Weird, wear it proudly, and support something good. You can check it all out at weirdclothingcompany.com. That's Weird Clothing Company, the small brand that fights back. Now back to the show. So this dude comes in the game, and I'm not ashamed to admit, I fucks with Drake to a certain extent. Okay? Some shit, I'm like, okay, I'm fucking with it. And then other shit, like the Tootsie Slide, I don't really fuck with that too much. That's just way out there. And I understand what he's doing, but at the same time, is it for me? No. Is it for a lot of people? Yeah. He's probably making the music for the kids. Obviously, the shit blew up on TikTok. That's a whole nother story. But my point is I don't think he gets a slide in the 80s and the 90s for the fuck shit that he's doing today. Let's even go as far as him picking up his Jamaican accent when he flows, or from England when he flows. The many different styles that he comes up with. He would be called the biter. Am I wrong? I really feel like he would be called the biter in the 80s and the 90s. Not to mention, and I gotta bring it up, and I know I'm gonna probably get a little bit of flack from this, just on the other side. I know my real hip hop fans and my real people that listen to real rap, and they want the real feeling, they want the real shit. They're not gonna give me too much shit. But the people that just love Drake, and they're just, I'm probably gonna get some shit just because people just love Drake. I don't know what his process is in regards to writing music. So I'm on the outside looking in. I'm not in his circle by any means, so I don't know. And I don't even know if I ever got that busy with doing the things that I was doing, if I would end up having a writer my damn self. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's the truth. I like writing my own flows. I like writing what's inside of me. But he don't write his own music. So would that fly in the 80s and 90s? Hell no. You had to write your own flows. That was the whole challenge of trying to be better than your peers. Steel sharpens steel. That was the whole point. You was always trying to beat or be better than your peers or your homies or your friends or whoever you was in a group with. You was always trying to be better than them. So you had to come up and write your own flows. So to me, in the 80s and 90s, Drake becomes just another rapper. But here's the twist. In the 80s and 90s, Drake totally crushes in the new Jack Swing era. Yep, I said it. Because we could debate his flows all day long, but he can sing his ass off, okay? He can carry a note. I think he kills in the new Jack Swing era. But for me, that's enough for Drake. So let's talk about the old school. Let's talk about some of the fucked up things I see within hip hop. And I don't know if it relates to the time or if it relates to that's just how business gets done. Because why the fuck does Run DMC put Adidas shell toe shoes on the map without a deal? They never got a deal with Adidas. And Kanye West is killing y'all with $200, $300, $400, $500 shoes. Yeezys. Enough to say that he's a billionaire from just Adidas and a Yeezy deal. That's crazy. Because that definitely should have been Run DMC as being a pioneer of starting this whole thing from the beginning with Adidas. How the fuck does that happen? Again, is it just a business? What happened? I'll give you another one. So Nas, no disrespect to Nas, Nas learned from Rakim. Why wasn't Rakim as big as Nas? Or bigger? I mean, the flows is just as fucking ridiculous as Nas. And again, he learned from Rakim. KRS One is another one that comes to mind. Super conscious flows, super deep when he writes, giving you a message in the music every time. Why is he not as big as Kendrick? Isn't that what Kendrick does? He puts the medicine in the candy. It was good for its era, but it doesn't go over now? That's crazy. Why are we so quick to forget our legends in the game? It's not that they didn't make music that wasn't timeless. So why are we so quick to forget them? Why are we so quick to dismiss our older hip hop? Why is rock songs and rock music, they take on their artists like legends? And I mean, it's very, 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 very hard to hear the word legend come out of people's mouths when it comes to old school hip hop. I mean, and really, to me, I feel like it's just not starting to be recognized, and people are starting to look back on it and say, damn, these guys were legends. They were the pioneers. That's just starting to happen. And it's because people like myself is just raising up and saying, man, like, we got to respect the music all the way around. I know I bring up Kanye West a lot. I bring up Kendrick. I bring up J. Cole. And sometimes I don't bring up some of the old school, LL Cool J, Run DMC, Beastie Boys. It's not that I forgot them, because I learned from all of them. I learned from Nas how to write my flows and how to be intricate. I think we need to start paying more respect to the hip hop and the music and the rap that came before us, because those artists paved the way for what we hear today. And I'm not even gonna go into a debate on whether or not today's hip hop can stand the test of time with the old school hip hop. It's all depending on what your taste is. So I float somewhere in the middle. I can get with the crazy shit every now and again that today's music brings, but I can also get down with the old school hip hop as well. So, does some of the artists that I named off, Drake, Kanye West, Kendrick Lamar, do they make it in 80s and 90s hip hop? Yes and no. It's all hypothetical. But I think the old school can definitely rock with the new school today. Hell yes. I think some of those flows and the cadences of the flows that came from the old school are resurfacing today. So without a doubt, I think if things were different, if some of these artists were born in different times and rap is what they chose to do as a profession, I think it's all hypothetical what we would see. But I think everyone would have a chance to win in some particular area. Might not be hip hop, might not be rap, might not be R&B. But they all win in a particular area. Thanks for listening. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to all my listeners that continuously come back week after week and listen to this podcast. I also want to give a shout out to Vlad TV and Russell Peters as well. This podcast is produced and recorded by me. I'm the only one behind the scenes making this podcast happen, so listening and spreading the word will be greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I'm sure your ears will thank your brain later. Inconsistently consistent. I'm out. This episode of Inconsistently Consistent was produced and recorded by Eric G. Polk, aka Everything Real Is Known. This is a Weird Recordings production.